my name is Alessandro. I work and live in New Zealand. I'm in Auckland, New Zealand. I am originally from Brazil. So thanks for inviting me, or actually, like, I applied for that, but thanks for choosing me to do a presentation on this Large Caps Aviators Day. Very happy to be here, like with a bunch of experts from the field. Just yeah, as I mentioned, Alessandro, I work in here. I'm the integration platform lead for Fisher and Pico. We've been doing lately like a lot of work with AIS in general, but like our main engine is Large Cap Standard, so that's what we use to do all the the logic of our integrations. This is just a sneak peek of the city that I live. So this is Auckland, New Zealand. So if you guys are ever around here, if you want to tips about like what are the best place to choose and to go, just let me know. I can give you a few tips about that. This is a volcano, by the way. So this was, I think, explored like about 500 years or so. Uh, so anyway, we are safe here, so not a problem at all. Okay, so the agenda for today is going to be around three major, I guess, topics. So I want to talk about LodgeCap's project structure and how we do that. I guess in general, but I was like what I've been doing in the company that I work today. Then we are going to do a little bit of how we set up and or organize DevOps pipelines and how we make our life easier by using Biceps modules and YAML templates. So the main work that we do is around Azure DevOps. We are not using GitHubs yet. So it's going to be around Azure DevOps and Biceps templates to deploy everything that we need. Okay, so this is this is how I'm going to do the presentation for you guys today. So first thing is about how we organize the work that we do. So our large caps structure is going to be that we might have like lots of workflows, lots of code that we want to organize, and the way we do that is going to be one large cap for one or more workflows, as long as they are on the same business process domain. So that's how we do the organization. So let's say that I have I'll just give the example of my company, right? So I have sales orders process, I have inventory process, I have stock management process. So all of these we organize them to be all together in a single logic cap. So it's going to be one logic caps to handle things related to the sales order process. It's going to be another logic cap to handle all the inventory business process and so on and so forth. So that's normally how we organize the project structure. And we are going to be hosting all of those logic caps in one service plan, one or we can select one or more service plans. Right now, I think we have around 10 to 12 logic caps running the same service plan. And we've been able to use a single service plan for all of those. If we ever see a need based on the execution volume for a particular logic cap or particular logic caps, we can have a second service plan to spread the workloads. But so far, we've been, I guess, quite successful managing everything in a single service plan. Our service plan is we configure to be scalable up to 3 instances. So normally we are going to see everything run in a single instance. Whenever we have peaks, it can go to 2 or 3. So that's how we left the configuration, so we can control the costs a bit by limiting to 3, but also allow the any peak that we didn't foresee to be handled properly. So just to show a little bit that we have, every single one of these projects, they handle one particular logic apps. The one that I'm showing the screen right now shows exactly what is my structure, and this is the structure we use across every single logic apps. So you are going to see that I have the code for the logic apps itself here, with its artifacts, with maps. We pretty much just use maps. We don't use schema so far. And all my workflows should do the work that I want to do. We have the standard, connections, the parameters that we use, configuration. We have the pipeline itself here together in the same project, and let's call it like accessories. So whenever we need to deploy other things related to that project, it's going to be together in the same thing, like Key Vault or Service Bus. Okay, so that's how we do the organization of our projects. Okay, so that comes for the next slide, which is going to talk. Sorry, is going to talk about that. So we have one repository per logic apps. So if I have like a logic apps that do sales order, is going to be one repository handling that. The other one that I mentioned about inventory is going to be another one, and so on and so forth. We do have a shared services repository, which means that anything that I need for the execution of my logic app, or any other services that I use, like together with my logic apps, like service bus, storage accounts, API management, application sites, log analytics, all of those things that we need for a solution, they are shared across in the platform. We have a single shared service repository that's going to be the responsible for maintaining that infrastructure. And we do have also another project specifically to manage modules and templates. So if I want to deploy a Key Vault, it's going to be the same kind of deployment across like all my environments. So instead of having to duplicate and work directly with the Bicep resource, we do have a module specific to do the creation of the things that we need. And we also use like lots of YAML templates to help us, minimize the work we do in the DevOps side whenever we are coding the actual code. Another thing that we do, we work like with a Git flow structure where we maintain the code across our environments. We have 4 environments today, which is development, test, pre-production, and production. And in those environments, we define what's going to happen based on what we're doing in the code. So if we are working in a feature branch, when we commit the code, that goes directly to our development environment. When we do a merge to the developer branch, that triggers the execution, the deployment to development and test. And you can see this represented here you can see this represented here in the screen. So this is a commit to a feature branch. This is a commit to a developer branch. And when we do a commit to a release, then it goes to pre-production and production. So this help our organization of the code and when things should be going to whatever environment. That is like using a combination with Bicep templates and parameter files. So we know like whenever we deploy to another environment, which settings we should be using to deploy in that particular environment. In the pipeline itself, and I'll talk specifically about the pipeline, we use stages, as you saw like in the previous slide, that I control stages to be doing deploy. We control like stages for environments, and we control stages for other things, like, for example, doing the builds. So we do have a build stage. That build stage is going to be responsible to make sure the code is good enough to be deployed. And if we pass that stage, we then publish the code to the pipeline and move to the next steps or to the next stages. Okay, the idea of publishing the code, even though like for logic apps, is pretty much like uh, there's not a compilation per se, but we always publish the code because we want to see if the code's gonna be what is the code that we deployed in that particular execution. So let me switch here. And you're going to see here that whenever I deploy my codes, I should be able to see what has been published. And if I want to inspect what is in there, just open the zip file that contains, that is like together with your pipeline execution, and you should be able to see what has been deployed. We do lots of validations to make sure that we just go to the next stage or to the next job or to the next step. If I have like all the previous execution working well. So we do lots of conditions in the pipeline to make sure the codes, the deployment worked fine until that point. And another thing that we do is the Git hash comparison, which means that what I want to know with this is like what exactly is the code that changed between one execution and the next. So I can go back here to show you guys what that means to us. So if I take like one example of the deployment that we did, so this is one of the changes we did few weeks ago. And if I look specifically into this deployment, I have like all these things that I need to do, like deploy service bus, deploy the Logic Apps infrastructure, deploy the Logic Apps workflows. I'm just doing that because in my check or in the check that we do, I know exactly what has changed between one execution and the next. So that helps us save time in the pipelines. So instead of trying to deploy like everything all the time, we just deploy things that have changed. Let me find one. Yeah, this is a good example. So I'm checking for changes. So this is what came back from the Git hash comparison. It's saying you change like one workflow inside your Logic Apps. So I am skipping service bus. I am skipping this Logic Apps infrastructure, and I'm just deploying the Logic Apps code itself, right? So the Logic Apps code is like a unit, so I need to deploy everything. I cannot only deploy like a single workflow or a single map. So we deploy the entire unit. So that's why we have this deployment happening here. And at the end of my process, I update to the latest hash. So the next time it runs, I know exactly what is going to be the next, the next difference. To update the hash, we use libraries, and we have variables inside of those libraries to control per environment what is the latest hash for the deployment. So that's how we know what has changed. Another thing we do, we deploy, as I mentioned, like we deploy the shared resources in a separate repository pipeline. But that's for the infrastructure, which means like the proper service bus, API management, storage account, and so on. But if I have dependency on things being used specifically for that Logic Apps, like I need a queue or I need a topic or I need a container in a storage account, I will add that to the project itself. So I think that's one of the things that I showed before. So let's go back here. As you guys can see here, this is my one of my Logic Apps projects that I have like all the code for the Logic Apps, but then I also have the need to create queues. And this is here in a Bicep template. Again, we just use Bicep for everything. So it doesn't, it can be like Logic Apps or it can be like anything else. But this is how we do. So we do the deployments of related things together with my large caps code. Uh, so that's, I guess, a good approach. I don't maintain those things like in a separate repository because it's going to be very hard to know uh, who is using that. So that's the reason that we put this together with the large caps codes. Yeah, that's what I'm saying here. Deploy the infrastructure only for these shared resources in their own pipelines. The Git hash that I just explained, like we only deploy what has changed by using Git hashes comparisons. So yeah, that's saves like a lot of time to us, as you can see here in this example. Instead of spending time trying to deploy things that are already there, we pretty much don't spend like any time on them and just go for the things that we really need to deploy because they changed. And the last thing is we use Bicep modules and YAML templates. So instead of having to redo things like all the time, we try to find what is the common things or the common ways of working between like all those pipelines, and we put them in modules or YAML templates. So the other thing we do, we have a step to validate the Bicep template to make sure it's in a good state before we even try to deploy. And in some pipelines, we do a what if command. So we can check the differences before allowing the deployment to happen. We only do that in the shared resources right now. I think that's the most important one. So I have, as I mentioned, the shared resources. I have service bus, I have storage accounts, API, and service plans, and all of that. So this what if command we are doing only in that shared resource, because before I approve the deployments going to the environments that we have, I want to see exactly what has changed from one to the other. So the what if is a good tool to tell us what happened between one execution to the next. The reason to use Bicep modules and YAML templates is to facilitate the developer's life. So for the developer of the logic apps, there is like a ton of steps or a lot of configuration that we need to do in the Azure DevOps pipelines. But for them, they just need to refer to single templates. So that's pretty much the goal. They pass parameters that we need to pass for each one of those templates that we use. But it becomes like a lot easier for them to specify or to create like pipelines for the code that they are doing. So instead of them spending like a lot of time doing the coding of those pipelines, they just use templates that make their life a lot easier. And this is like an example of how we do. So we have like the modules. This is just some of the modules that we have, like to create API connections or function app, the logic app itself, key vault, storage account. We use a few scripts to help us manage like the Git hash with those two here, or even import APIs in a faster way because we just import the things that have changed here as well. And these are some of the templates that we have. So you're going to see, for example, the publish of a Logic Apps standard, deployment of a Logic Apps infrastructure, deployment of a Logic Apps code. So this is what makes the life of the developer a lot easier. I forgot to do one thing. Let me switch quickly here, and then we can come back. So as an example, so we do I have like one logic apps that I deployed yesterday. So that logic apps are very simple logic apps. So we do have simple HTTP request being received and a response being sent back. So that's the only thing this guy does. So let's say that I want to make a few changes on it. which means that I want to use a liquid map as once the designer opens up for us. Yeah, so that's the code that I have in place today. But let's say that I want to make a call to a map. So I'll be calling this. For me, it's going to be a simple transformation from JSON to JSON. I will specify name that I added there, and I'll be pointing to this map that I have deployed before. Because I have my pipeline already set, whenever I commit this code, the deployment is going to happen. But before we do that, let me switch real quick to what is my pipeline. So I have I was talking about modules and templates, but for the sake of this, demonstration here, I just did everything at once. So I have this deployment to deploy the large caps infrastructure, and I have this other task to deploy the large caps code. Okay. If I look at the Bicep for the large caps infrastructure, that's the guy that I'm using. And in here, let's go to the top. I have a few parameters that I want to pass. I have a previous key vault that has been created already. I have a previous managed identity that have been created already. And this is about, okay, do the service plan creation, do the storage account creation, log analytics, application site. So all of this is going to be created if they haven't been already. Again, I did this uh, all together for the sake of this presentation. This is the actual large cap. This is about deploying the infrastructure. Okay. So I'm doing everything that I need, creating connections, creating access permissions. So everything that needs to be done is going to be done here. And this is about that step, the large caps infrastructure. Whenever I'm ready to deploy the code, it's going to be this other step, which I use the build that I did in this stage. So again, stage for building the infra, stage for deploying the infrastructure and the code. When I commit the code, and I send that to the remote repository. If we switch here now, let's go back here. So I have the pipeline being triggered because I'm monitoring the main branch, which is going to trigger the execution. It's going to take some time because in this demo, I didn't do all the validations that I mentioned before. So while this finishes, let's switch to the actual code that we have in our solutions. I was showing to you guys. So this is what the developer needs to do whenever he wants to work with our structure. So I have the build phase or the build stage. I have the development, tests, pre-production, and production stages. I do my conditions to make sure that I have the code in the state that I want. So the things that I was talking about, the branches and how we use and what that means to our deployments. So we control here in those conditions. I only go to the next stage, like test, if my previous stage has been worked fine. And I just need to specify templates. So that's pretty much what the developer needs to do, and specify the parameters for each, which makes it a lot simpler for them. This guy here, it's here as well in the same project. But if we look at what it actually does, so this is the code to say deploy. Sorry, this one. This is the code to say deploy my infrastructure if I need, and this is the code to say deploy my workflow code if I need. All the controls for validating the Git hash and all those things that I spoke to you guys, that's being handled in those templates, and the developer doesn't need to know that, so he just needs to pass the right parameters. These other things that it's in here is because, as I mentioned to you, sometimes I need to add service bus topics and subscriptions. Sometimes I need to add a container in a storage account. Sometimes I need to do other stuff that is related specifically to that project. So we manage here as well. But in terms of the LogicApps deployment, is pretty much a template that I'll be using. I can show a little bit more. Let me closely try to release a little bit of memory before this thing gives up on me. So here is the templates that I was mentioning, like the things you use to do things the same way over and over. So you have the Bicep modules here at the bottom. They are just Bicep modules, nothing majorly complicated about them. It's just about knowing which modules to use. Sometimes we do need to send information out of the Bicep module to be using the next step or the next execution. So sometimes we do use this. But for those that have worked with Bicep, it's very simple, very not complicated to work with them. Normally the Bicep modules, they're very fairly simple to work with. Okay, so as you can see here, nothing major happening. Sometimes we do things like in the module to set up like permissions or stuff like that. But yeah, very simple to work with them. These are my this is my code that I do to set up the infrastructure. This is the code that we do to deploy the code itself. They use other templates like checking the file changes, as I mentioned, for Git hash, downloading other scripts that we need to do, and a few other tasks that we have in our code. And just to finalize, just to show that, like in this deployment that I did from Visual Studio Code, not from Visual Studio, but the code that I committed from Visual Studio Code was triggered the execution of this pipeline, which deploy both my infrastructure as well as the codes. And if I go back here, you should see that LogicApps up to date. So I can look up, that's the code that I have. And if I go to the designer, that's one thing that I noticed, like sometimes it doesn't show up, but if we force the execution, it's gonna pick the latest thing. I think it's just one thing with the LogicApps designer. But if we do look here in the execution, we should see, yeah, we should see the map being executed. That's my latest version of my code. Let's try one more time to see the designer. Yeah, now I can see. So it's a little bit like something that needs to be fixed properly. But after I do a deployment, it doesn't show up in the designer, but it's there. So just the one execution should be seeing that shortly coming up. Cool. Yeah, I think I ran out of time. So I'll just finish up here. Thank you again for allowing me to do this presentation. Hopefully, it was a session that you guys can use like in your day to day. For those that want to keep in contact, these are my contact details. I have my blog post. This is my Twitter account and also my LinkedIn profile. So thank you for having me.